joys of devolved government. 21-month waiting list for the operation. So, yeah. Good afternoon. Very pleased to have the opportunity to bring you up to date with the situation in Ulster and UKIP Northern Ireland. So I think I'll just start off with clear something out of the way. I'm going to say a word. If anybody is of a nervous disposition, cover your ears for a couple of seconds. Backstop. So, yeah. That's the famous Irish backstop, which some rigidly maintain must be paramount before the wishes of 17.4 million voters, including 46% of those of us in Northern Ireland who voted to leave. And even before that can be considered, people are saying, this must be. Nancy Pelosi, the majority leader in the American House of Congress, House of Representatives, said there'd be no trade deals approved by them unless, the Good Friday Agreement is totally adhered to, etc. It's a ridiculous situation. And I'd just like to also make clear that in the referendum, Northern Ireland was counted on a constituency basis for some reason rather than local government areas. And although they finally announced the results for the whole of Northern Ireland, 7 of those 18 constituencies voted to leave, and some of them pretty substantially. 62% was the highest in North Antrim. And So what's so important about the backstop? Everybody's saying, we've got to do something about the backstop, we've got to change the backstop, we've got to negotiate about the backstop. Does anybody know what's important about the backstop? The only answer I can give you is nothing. It's supposed to shield people in both Northern Ireland both Northern Ireland and Ireland from the horrors of a hard Brexit. Instead, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, it's an excuse for provisional Sinn Féin and its newfound allies in the Irish government to express territorial ambitions to continue to destabilise Northern Ireland. And make no mistake, a stable Northern Ireland with a stable future ahead of it is something that Sinn Féin is a total anathema to. So there's no doubt that there are a few in the farming communities around the border where products, milk goes backwards and forwards, comes from the farm, goes across the border to the processing plant or vice versa, comes back, something more is done to a package somewhere else and then goes back and eventually maybe ends up in the supermarket in Northern Ireland or in Dublin or somewhere. And they will be affected for a while, there's no doubt about that. One of that is something really that can be sorted out. We should be able to, we'll be an independent nation by the time we've left the European Union, and our government should be able to sort it out. It'll be something for the dissolved legislature at Stormont to sort it, well, maybe wait a minute, probably not, because they won't be there. But when I said some farmers, by the way, you get the impression, if you listen to people like the Ulster Farmers Union, you get the impression that there's this united agricultural revolution against Brexit. Nothing's further from the truth. There's a huge number of farmers who, in spite of their union and that sort of thing, really looking forward to getting out of the repressive EU legislation on farming, and some of them are very big supporters of leave and Brexit. But keeping to that same industry, I think some of the biggest supporters of the anti-democratic backstop are some of the big agribusinesses conglomerates in Northern Ireland. their arguments seem to carry an awful lot of disproportionate amount of weight until we realise that the vast bulk of Northern Ireland's trade is not with the rest of Ireland, which they seem to focus on, but actually the vast bulk of our trade is with Great Britain. In fact, 60% of Northern Ireland's trade with the rest of the known universe goes down the A75 in southwest Scotland. Concentrating on, it's important to concentrate on a smaller amount, quite significant amount of trade we do have backwards and forwards across the border, but it doesn't need to stop everything, which people seem very keen to have. The other issue there, and I think it's an important one, is many of these agribusinesses, not all, but many of them, they tend to rely on immigrant labour who are employed, they're exploited, I would say, on very short-term, non-contracted basis, usually about 3 months. So their contribution to our society is limited. The contribution of these firms, these businesses to our society is limited, to say the least. And there's strong evidence of locally based residents, regardless of race, creed, anything else, find themselves actively discouraged from applying for employment in some of those sectors. Personally, I'm keeping a watching brief at the moment on a case of a local chap who applied for a job in a meatpacking plant, and it's coming up before the employment tribunal soon. The weight of the whole system that has been applied against him is enormous. I'm not going to go into details because it's still ongoing, this case, but he keeps on phoning up solicitors to see if they can get him represented at the hearings and things. And he keeps on getting it. Oh, this is very interesting. We'd love to take this case. We'll do that for you. Are you happy to pay us? Yes, I'm happy to pay you. And, so then, sometimes he sees barristers. Sometimes he doesn't get that far. But then, usually he gets either a phone call or an email, usually as a message from somebody else saying, "Sorry, we can't act for you." That's usually a few days later, and I think I can't prove it, but I think there is something very sinister going on in that area. So it's an interesting case. I'm looking forward to it going ahead. Anyway, back to the backstop. There's no need for it. Keeps the whole of the UK, or anything that keeps the whole of the UK or Northern Ireland tied to the apron strings of the EU dictatorship. The United Kingdom government has frequently reassured everyone that if there are to be tariff checks on the UK-Irish border, it will not be the UK which initiates them. I think I sense a lot of desperation now in Prime Minister Leo Varadkar's attitude. He's only belatedly, I think, after stirring the pot for quite a while, realising that his country is likely to be left in the lurch as a reluctant guardian of the EU's protectionist single market. And I think it's time for the people of the Republic of Ireland to seriously look at leaving the EU. And joining its major trading partner and reaching out to the world. And we are the Republic of Ireland's major trading partner by a huge amount. So I've already alluded to that glorious institution that currently doesn't sit in palatial surroundings on a hill overlooking East Belfast. Northern Ireland, like Scotland and Wales, is blessed with a devolved legislature. This consists of a 90-member assembly, that's more than in Wales, which is nearly twice the population, from which an executive is selected. But that's not all. According to the much quoted and much misquoted Good Friday Agreement, some of you may have heard of it, each assembly member must now register as a unionist or a nationalist or other. A First Minister is then nominated from the largest grouping, while a Deputy First Minister is nominated from the second largest grouping. The Assembly must then elect these two as a package, or it's toys out of the pram time. However, there is a catch. In fact, in my view, and the view of many others, I know, the Good Friday Agreement entrenches a poisonous sectarian divide which has cuts across politics and civil society in Northern Ireland. Also, accountability to the electorate has been seriously diluted. The Assembly Executive is elected on a party-based Dahon system, which is a bit similar to the way in Great Britain here you vote for MEPs, the party list system, except it's within the Assembly. And it's a case really of the Assembly rubber stamping in turn ministerial, we call them ministers really, ministerial nominees from party leaders. Accountability there has been further diluted. Now, people often point out to me, and they're quite right, the Good Friday Agreement was, there goes my stick, never mind. The Good Friday Agreement was endorsed by referendum in 1998, 72% to 28%. Now that was a war-weary electorate, and quite frankly, they were staring down the barrels of IRA and UVF guns, and adopted for what they hoped was peace. Don't blame me, I was one of the 28%. However, the plot thickens. In 2007, the Good Friday Agreement was superseded by the St Andrews Agreement. St Andrews is famous for more than golf, apparently. Here, following an inevitable collapse of the Assembly and the Executive in 2003 and subsequent elections in 2007, what had now become the two largest parties, the DUP and Provisional Sinn Féin, went into solemn conclave together, while the other three main Assembly parties wandered around the corridors complaining. So the DUP, Provisional Sinn Féin, came up with a new version, whereby the largest party of each of the sectarian groupings could nominate the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister. And this was deliberate. It ensures that they both could play in the fear of either the Unionist or the Nationalist voters in Northern Ireland, that unless they backed the DUP or Sinn Féin, the other community, I'll put community in inverted commas, would gain the First Minister position. And that's how all elections have been conducted since. And it's been very successful. And those two parties now dominate politics in Northern Ireland. I remember in the 2016 Assembly elections, I was contesting Uri and Armagh, and the DUP posters all around just said, "Don't let Martin McGuinness become First Minister." You know, that was the whole impact of their message. You know, so and the implication was if you voted for anybody else on any political basis at all, you were risking a nationalist takeover, etc., etc. So so it really was interesting. And of course, was there a referendum to endorse that? No. You know, so. And of course there wasn't, because you don't ask the electorate too often what they think of things. And by the way, I talked about these smaller parties, the Ulster Unionists, the Alliance Party and the SDLP wandering around the corridors being outraged. But as soon as an agreement was made, they all came surging back to appoint their ministers and sharing the goodies. So sometimes it does turn out to be toys out of the pram. And this happened in March 2017, the snap Assembly election. And the party leaders in that case are supposed to get together for talks. And what that means is those leaders can take the votes of the electorate who voted for them on the basis of their campaign literature, the party, the election broadcasts, etc., etc. They can take those votes and they take them away into, they're not smoke-filled rooms anymore, they're muesli-filled rooms or something like that. And they can, they sit there and quite literally, they barter their votes. It's like playing a game of cards with, and the loss of accountability is enormous, between, and when there's a big major issue going on, and as I said before, Sinn Féin are not interested in Northern Ireland running efficiently or stably. 2 years and 8 months since the Assembly met for anything other than one day to fail to form an executive. And Northern Ireland's been thriving in that time. But the whole emphasis is still on we must get the Assembly back. People talk about the politicians as though they're a different breed of people, not people who are elected. Why can't they get together and agree something? Why can't Boris Johnson and Joe Swinson get together and agree something with Brexit? Last September in Birmingham, at the UKIP conference in Birmingham, we were all very pleasantly surprised. It actually happened in Witherspoon's Figure of 8 pub. A group of Welsh and Scottish and Northern Irish colleagues got together, and we realised that we were all fed up with our local devolved governments. We hadn't realised that very clearly before that. So we've drawn up, and there's still a few of these left on the Northern Ireland stand next door, UKIP for the Union, which I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to our Welsh colleagues for providing us with this today. We all want our devolved legislators to go, Stormont must go now. Good Friday Agreement no longer runs, the peace process no longer exists, and the other thing is the sectarian polarisation in Northern Ireland has never been more pronounced, and I think it comes directly from the Good Friday Agreement. So we must stop appeasing the threat of renewed terror. Our government must stop doing that. It must stop throwing our brave former servicemen to the wolves in the name of non-existent peace process. And I'll finish with a warning to all UK fellow citizens in Great Britain. Mistakes were made in the name of what was termed winning hearts and minds in Northern Ireland. And a peace process is really an appeasement process. I've left substantial parts of more deprived areas, areas that the political class don't really deign to look at too hard. Let the more deprived under the effective rule of either dissident Republican terrorists or loyalist paramilitaries. And the hard-working people in those areas, far from supporting the peace process with their hearts and minds, find they must turn a blind eye to criminality and terror or face the violent consequences. There are, I live in a nice quiet suburban street, but within 2 miles of where I live, there are housing estates. There are examples of both those different types of areas where really the writ of somewhere like the UDA or one of the distant Republican groups sort of runs, and if you flout them, you're in trouble. So I'd just like to pass that warning on, because I can see signs of it happening here in Great Britain. You don't upset ordinary law-abiding people in areas where terrorists are operating from. But then, what do? Do you throw them to those terrorists? So I'll just leave with that, and just finish off saying UKIP for the Union. Thank you very much.